Hello, love bugs. Welcome to another episode of Girls Night. I am your host, Carly Doxtator. And recently, or not even recently, I feel like in the past couple years on Instagram, on TikTok, on all of that, I feel like spirituality has kind of taken front and center stage. It's that is for a lot of reasons. A lot of people are talking about manifestation and your place in the world and all of this other stuff that's going on. But I feel like with this resurgence of this interest in spirituality, that it has also brought some side effects that aren't so great when it comes to spirituality. Spirituality has been, in my opinion, watered down a bit. So there's all these people on Instagram and TikTok and all these influencers and stuff that are claiming to be these spiritual gurus and telling you how to reach enlightenment and how to manifest the best. And there's no hate to those people, but I feel like lots of times people can confuse those people's opinions with facts and truth that has created somewhat of a disconnect between what spirituality actually is and what people are portraying it to be or thinking that it is recently. So I wanted to do this episode all about spirituality, all about the missing piece that this new age spirituality is missing. So let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Life can get a little crazy, so let's talk about it. If you're ready to dive deeper, talk about what really matters, and feel a little more empowered, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Doxtator. I'm a life coach, baker, dog mom of two, and you're always there for you, gal pal. And I'm so excited to have you join me. So grab your fuzzy socks, put on your comfy pants, and let's have girls' night. To start off the episode, I feel like it's really important to actually define what spirituality actually is because I feel like it's such this ethereal, flowing concept that it's hard to pin down sometimes. So, in my opinion, spirituality is the personal and deep experience of connection to something bigger than yourself. So, that could be to nature, to love, to your soul, to the universe, to the divine. Essentially, it's the inner journey of seeking meaning, purpose, and truth, but that is often rooted in practices of turning inward to yourself. So it's kind of this concept of what is the bigger meaning and what is my place in it, and how am I a part of that bigger meaning, and how is it all connected? That's what spirituality is actually about. It's a very individualized experience. Everybody can have a different take on what spirituality actually is. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but I feel like that's actually part of what's missing in spirituality. This new age social media spirituality is allowing for that fluidity between people. Essentially, people turn to spirituality lots of times when they come into a period of their life where they feel really confused, they feel really lost. And so it's that exploration of what does this all mean? And who am I in this play of life? And unlike religion, which I feel like spirituality and religion are often confused, but they are very distinct and very separate things. So in spirituality, it's more about the individual person. It's often very individualized, very intuitive. You're tuning into your own body, your own beliefs. You're creating your own systems for what works for you and what works for your soul and what doesn't. Religion, on the other hand, is often very focused on the community. It's very much about following rules, sticking to certain dogmas, certain doctrines in order to make it to enlightenment, make it into a heaven, for example, or whatever that end goal is. So it's very distinct. I personally, and we won't get into my opinions too much, I personally have never been a big fan of organized religion. I feel like it has historically just been used as a means to control other people. I'm going to mention the Crusades because that was literally just a full war, a full set of wars based on religion. And that happens so often. And you can even see it just in the day to day with how lots of times religion tries to control who you love. It tries to control women a lot of the time. So that's my opinion. I've never been the biggest fan of organized religion. I have a lot of friends that are religious, so there is no hate to anybody who is religious. But for me, I've come to that conclusion on my own. I've done a lot of self-reflection. I am friends with people from a lot of different religions. So if you haven't kind of gone through that process yourself, I would encourage you to do it, to just question your own beliefs and actually really go there to see if those truly are your beliefs or if you're just believing what you've been told. But anyways, I digress. So back to spirituality in relation to religion. So, spirituality often involves a lot of self-awareness and inner exploration, and it's a search for deeper meaning beyond material success or external validation. I feel like that's a really big part of it. And with spirituality, there is this sense of interconnectedness with others, with nature, with earth, with this higher power, whatever that is, whether that's the universe or whatever. And it really values compassion and empathy and just like the human experience and really just all living beings' experience. It really focuses on gratitude, on presence, being present in the present moment. And it involves a lot of different practices like meditation and journaling and energy work and rituals to bring clarity or to bring peace. That's what spirituality kind of is. And so, in relation to religion, on the other hand, while spirituality is a very inner, personalized journey, religion is very much focused on community. And it's very much an organized set of beliefs, set of practices. It's focused on worship rather than internal reflection. So religion is focused on worship of an outward being a lot of the time rather than an internal reflection. And I kind of mentioned this a second ago, but when it comes to religion versus spirituality, spirituality is very free flowing. It'll be different for everybody. When it comes to religion, there's very much a defined set of rules that you are supposed to follow. And one of the biggest differences between spirituality and religion is that spirituality has very much, or it's supposed to have, very much an open mindset that welcomes everybody and accepts everybody as they are, because it's very much about this concept of we are all one. We are all part of the same energy flow. It is all about that unique oneness and that interconnectedness between all of living beings on Earth and the universe. But then on the other hand, religion kind of promotes separateness in a way because it says, my religion is correct, yours is wrong. Mine is the correct belief, yours is the incorrect belief. So it doesn't really have as much flexibility for that oneness that brings us all together. And so there are, obviously talking through that, there are some similarities between spirituality and religion. Both spirituality and religion explore those like big questions that we ask ourselves. Why are we here? What happens after death? Uh, what is the truth, or what is love, or what is God? It's exploring those bigger philosophical concepts and trying to find answers to those. And then both of these they actually can do a very good job of fostering a sense of community. Both spirituality and religion do a very good job of that. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of people turn to spirituality in times of need or after they've gone through a crisis or some traumatic event. Same thing with religion. A lot of people turn to specific religions when they have gone through something really traumatic or when they're having a hard time processing an event in their lives. And so, in that sense, both spirituality and religion can offer a path to healing, to hope, and to connection, which on that front, I think is an amazing thing for everybody, right? Everybody could use a little bit more hope, connection, and healing in their lives. I don't think we can ever have enough of that. But in essence, the difference between spirituality and religion is that spirituality is very inner focused, inner led, and religion is very much about tradition and more so about those external teachings. And the funny thing about this, because there are some similarities, there are some differences between the two. People can be spiritual but not religious. People can be religious but not spiritual. They can be both religious and spiritual, or you could just be none, right? There is the option that you don't believe in anything bigger and that you don't really question those things, that it's like, this is our life, this is what it is, and then I die when I die, you know? So that's also something that is on that spectrum. So again, no hate to anybody. This is just how I view things. I consider myself to be spiritual, but definitely not religious, as I said, because I do not believe in organized religion. But with that said, I kind of want to explore this concept of oneness of we are all one. We are all part of this bigger thing, right? Whatever that bigger thing is. So I'm going to give you an analogy to help you understand what people mean when they actually say we are all one. We are pieces of the same whole. So imagine you are holding a tomato in your hand. It is a full tomato on its own, but then you decide to cut that tomato into slices. So each individual slice is now its own separate entity. It's a whole slice all on its own. It doesn't need anything else to be a whole slice on its own. So this first slice is a slice no matter what. It doesn't need anything else to be a new slice. And then the second slice is also a whole slice all on its own. That slice is similar to the first slice, but it's kind of different, right? Because we're at a different point in the tomato. The seeds are going to look different. The flesh is going to be a little bit different. And so each individual slice, as you're slicing this tomato, only knows itself to be that. It knows itself to be a slice of tomato. And it's only when you put the slices back together again and look at it from a different perspective that you realize all of the individually whole slices are actually also part of a different whole entity, the tomato. So essentially, we're all just slices of tomato, whole on our own, but also a piece of something bigger, whatever that bigger thing is. That's how I like to look at it. That helps me to understand that whole concept of like, we are the same, but we are separate, right? We are the same, but different. We are all one, but we are all our own entities. That's how I like to picture it in my head. And so, moving on to what I said at the beginning, the episode is all of about that missing piece of spirituality and what I think is missing. So, what I think this like new age social media spirituality really misses the mark on, first and foremost, is that shitty things are sometimes shitty things, and there does not have to be a silver lining. You do not have to look for a why. You do not have to think on the positive side of everything. Like drinking a cup of piss is still drinking a cup of piss at the end of the day, you know? Like, you do not have to always pretend that it is lemonade. Like, when something shitty happens, it is still shitty, especially in the moment that it is happening. But eventually, you become stronger, you make new memories, you learn to cope with that thing that happened. And so it becomes a little bit easier and it doesn't feel as shitty. But at the end of the day, it's still a shitty thing that happened, right? And so I heard a really great analogy, and I think it's from Jay Shetty. Love Jay Shetty, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was. But he was talking about grief. And so he was talking about how grief is like carrying a rock in your pocket that never goes away. So at first, that rock is really, really heavy because you are not used to carrying it. But eventually, that rock becomes a lot lighter, not because the rock gets smaller or goes away, but because you have become stronger and more adept at carrying it. So, in that sense, the more we try to act like certain events did not change and shape us, the longer we're going to feel like we've lost our way. And the longer we try to pretend like we're perfect, the longer we are going to feel completely lost and lonely and on our own. And it's funny because a lot of people these days do say that they feel really lonely, that they do say that they feel like they're all on their own or that they're doing everything themselves or they're carrying everything. And I think a really big part of that is because we are trying to portray these perfect selves and we're trying to have the good vibes only and no negative thoughts. But that is so detrimental to our mental health, eventually to our physical health, and also to our spiritual health, but also to the connection. Because when you think about connection, sure, we do connect over good times, right? Like we all have good memories with our friends, but real deep connection also needs the scars. It comes through struggling together. It comes through healing together. It comes through facing the fact that we are all humans on this thing called Earth, just trying our best with what we've got, you know? And the truth is that the messy underneath that you are trying to hide, that messy underground, that is what brings us all together because real connection comes from seeing that little spark in another that and you feel it when you have that connection with someone. It's that little spark of ourselves within them that we recognize. And that's really when you're able to realize like, hey, these are my people. But that spark comes from the dark times, right? You can't recognize a spark in the light. Like when it's all light all the time, you're not going to see it. So you have to really be able to dive into those shitty pieces in order to find everything else that you are trying to find. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons that people feel lonely these days and that spirituality feels a little bit off. I feel like a lot of people feel this way, that spirituality has felt a little bit off, and it's because of this. It's because people are trying to portray themselves in a certain way. And I think a part of this also is because of all of these rules that spirituality has randomly taken on. So, and I think this does have to do with all of the exposure that certain people on social media get, saying like, in order to be spiritual, you need to be this way, and you need to act this way, and you need to behave this way. Like, it's all of these things that there literally are not rules for what your spirituality should feel like to yourself. And I think that's the part where spirituality is starting to go wrong because, in my opinion, the rules are for religion, right? Spirituality is not supposed to have rules tied to it. That's kind of the whole point, is finding your unique place and your unique set of beliefs within the world, within the whole. And the fact that there's all these rules about how to be in your divine feminine and how to be in your divine masculine and how to best show up as a spiritual mentor and how to live your best spiritual life, like whatever. It's all kind of like BS, honestly, in my opinion. Like, there is no best way to be a spiritual person. There is just your way to be a spiritual person because spirituality, as we mentioned at the beginning, is a very individualized experience. And the whole purpose of spirituality is to be leading you home to yourself, is the whole purpose of it. Hi, Love Bug. I've got a juicy little gift for you. And if you've been feeling off, stuck in your head, or like your vibe just is not vibing lately, then this is for you. I created a free guide called The 3 Secrets to Creating a Magnetic Energy Shift right now. And it's exactly what you need to start shifting your energy instantly. These are the exact tools I use with my private coaching clients when they're ready to stop chasing and start attracting. We're talking powerful, we're talking practical, and yes, of course, we are talking a little bit woo, but in the best possible way. In the guide, you will learn how to clear energetic blocks, activate your most irresistible frequency, shift into receiving mode, and there's even a bonus secret on how to use your body language to instantly boost your confidence and presence. So if you're ready to feel like the version of you who turns heads, magnetizes opportunities, and walks through the world like the main character, then this is your sign. Head to the show notes and click the link to download your free copy. It is quick, it is powerful, and it is going to leave you feeling like, damn, I really am that girl. All right, let's get back into the episode. So going back to talking about how one of the biggest pieces of spirituality that is missing is just letting shitty things be shitty. For an example for me is with my ex. It was a really hard breakup for me, as you guys know, if you have listened to some of my past episodes where I have talked about it. But one of the things that made it take so long for me to heal from that relationship was the fact that I was trying to avoid the feelings that I actually felt about him and about the relationship. So I spent so much of my time trying to convince myself that I was fine, that I was not heartbroken, that I had forgiven him. And I had kept telling myself over and over and over again, I've forgiven him, I've forgiven him, I've forgiven him. But the truth of the matter is I had not forgiven him, even though I was trying to convince myself that I had. In fact, there was a period of time in there that I actually truly hated him. And that sounds really intense, but I really did. And I started to hate him more and more the more I tried to avoid the fact that I like had started to hate him. But truly at the end of the day, there was a period where I hated him. And I think the hard part of that for me was the fact that I hated him, but I also hated myself for hating him, but I also hated myself for still loving him. And so for me, it was a really confusing dynamic where there was all this hate going on for everybody, which is not healthy. But the fact that I was avoiding it and avoiding going through those conflicting feelings made them perpetuate for a really, really long time past what they would have gone if I had just gone into the emotions, let myself feel them, and let myself move on. And so I was in this situation asking over and over, like, why it happened. I was trying to figure out the reason behind it. But for me, there never really was a clear why. And that's okay. Like, eventually I stopped asking why because the why doesn't really matter in painful situations as much as what you do with the pain you felt from it. So you can either take that pain and use it to continue hurting yourself and other people, or you can use that pain and transform it into something bigger. You can transform it into something where you're using it to help other people and to love better. And for me, as I said, the more I tried to convince myself that I had forgiven him, even though I had not forgiven him, the more I started to become bitter and lose sight of myself because I was just too enveloped with distracting myself with other things. And what allowed me to truly forgive him in the end was allowing myself to really hate him. Like, that's really what allowed me to move on. But the thing about hate, for anybody that's listening, is that hate is really exhausting. Our bodies do not like to hate. And when you hold on to hate, that's when you start to have physical ailments. That's when you start to gain weight. That's when you start to have mental health issues. Your body, your soul does not like to hold on to hate. And because of that fact, when you actually really let yourself feel it to the full extent that you need to feel it, once you feel that, it dissipates really, really fast, right? So in my situation, once I allowed myself to feel all of those honestly not good feelings to feel of hatred and betrayal and hurt and disappointment, then I was able to fully move on and start to see both the good and the bad of our relationship and see it for what it truly was, you know? Like sometimes you just got to drink the piss without trying to convince yourself that it is lemonade because sometimes, as I said, there is not a why at all. Like if your mom dies, or if one of your parents gets cancer or some other terminal illness, if one of your friends commits suicide or overdoses or anything like that, that is a lot of fucking piss to swallow, you know? And at the end of the day, maybe there is a why. Maybe there is, but maybe you don't need to force yourself to find it. And it's okay that sometimes you just got to say to yourself, like, hey, this shitty thing happened and it changed me and shaped me in ways that I did not expect. But now I am going to move forward as I am right now, not as who I used to be. I will say it again. Sometimes you just got to drink the piss instead of trying to pretend that it is lemonade because at the end of the day, it's still going to taste like piss, right? It's still going to be shitty. But then once you get to the situation that is the true lemonade, it is going to taste a whole lot sweeter because you already went through all the shitty stuff. So you understand how good the good stuff actually really is. And so, kind of on that note, too, when it comes to healing, this is kind of a little side tangent, but when it comes to healing, healing is also just a process that you got to work through. You know, I feel like a lot of people expect themselves to be healed all of a sudden, you know, like, oh, I've forgiven them. I'm healed. That situation doesn't bother me anymore. But like on the inside, like it truly does because healing is it can be such a long process, right? And it is full of a lot of ups and downs and backs and forths, and you're going to make progress one day and then you're going to fall back the next day. But that's what progress always looks like, right? It's not going to be a straight line. You're not just going to exponentially shoot up most of the time, right? There is always going to be more for you to uncover and to unravel, especially in really traumatic or jarring or surprising situations that we deal with. So, when I look at healing, I imagine it as I'm going to give you another analogy because I love analogies. So, when I look at healing, just imagine you have a wine cup filled with red wine. The liquid in that wine is really, really dark because it's red wine. And then the healing part of it, imagine you place that cup under a stream of water. So, you're not pouring it out, right? The red wine is still in there, but the cup is now filling up and overflowing and getting mixed in with water. So the longer that this cup of wine is under that stream of water, the longer that you are on that healing journey, the more that the red wine is going to dissipate, fall out, and get watered down. So the more that trauma and that pain is going to get watered down by all of this healing and all these other experiences that you're having. So the red wine will always be there. There will always be an essence of red wine in the water, right? It is always going to be a part of you. Your experiences, your trauma, your setbacks are always going to be a part of who you are. And really, it's just character development if you really want to put a silver lining on it. But it is always going to have a little flavor in your life. But eventually, it becomes mostly water. So eventually, it becomes mostly that healed version of you with just a taste of that trauma inside. So that's how I like to look at it. It's a process. Even try that yourself at home, you know, get a cup of red wine. It's going to take a lot longer than you think for the wine to dissipate to almost a clear color. But even when it does look completely clear, like there will still be a little bit of essence in there of the wine. So I think that's a really fun one to experiment with and try yourself. But Yeah, I guess that is all I have for you guys. I feel like I went on a couple tangents there, but oh well. Hopefully somebody needed to hear that. So thanks, love bugs. I'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, then go ahead and subscribe so you get updates with us every week. You can also follow us on Instagram at KRC Coaching. If you're interested in working one-on-one, then go ahead and visit our website, krccoaching.com, to book your first 30-minute session for free. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Love you. Bye.